Good morning, everyone. So this morning I wanted to talk about the signs, synchronicity, letting go and letting God. So what do I mean by that? So obviously when you are living a spiritual life and you're creating a spiritual business, it's so important that we allow ourselves to be a channel for spirit, as in, the light, okay, and God. And often that's about helping us to let go of the egoic attachment to how we think things should be. Now, I'm not everyone, okay? This is something I struggle with as someone who's very proactive, as someone who's highly motivated, okay? I get distracted just like everyone else. I do ask for guidance every day, but sometimes I am so focused on something or trying to make something work that I sometimes forget to step back, right? And it's in those pause moments that we become more aware, right? And sometimes we have maybe invested so much time in something that we keep focusing on it and we are trying to make it work. And sometimes, of course, sometimes the reason something is not working, it may be something that is simple, it needs to be rectified, or you can't see, or maybe you need to address something, or maybe you need something, maybe does need more work in it. But the reality is, no matter how spiritual you are and how in tune you are and how much you use your spiritual senses, we all can miss the signs, the synchronicities, because we struggle to let go, and we struggle to let God in, because many times it's the ego trying to control everything, and our mind thinking that it has to pan out, something has to pan out in the way that we think it must pan out. So I want you to think about, first of all, goals and dreams and wishes. And often when we set goals, dreams and wishes, and even if you do the law of attraction, if you have too much attachment to how that goal, dream or whatever should come, you basically constrict yourself to how that will appear. And sometimes goals or dreams or wishes don't appear, not for the reasons that it's to do with your manifesting skills, but it's because there's something else either better or something else has to happen for something in your life to shift. Now, one of the things that I noticed very early on in my career when I did stress management was that most people were setting goals very from the ego, and they were setting goals from their head rather than truly their heart and their soul. And even people who thought they were setting goals from their heart and their soul, it wasn't. It was the head. It was the head that was ruling it, because they had in their head that if they achieved this certain goal, it would maybe, for example, make them happy, make them this, this and this. They weren't connecting on a deep soul and spiritual level, because they were still functioning on fear. They were still functioning on the survival response. They were still functioning on the logic. Now, I'm a very creative person, and I tend to do things in a very creative way. Sometimes that gets me in, I'm not saying trouble, but it can sometimes cause chaos because I'm so creative, and it can be messy. That's the easiest way to explain it. But in other ways, like my friend David would say to me, for someone who's very creative and whatever, and also the logic brain comes in a lot as well, right? And that tries to override things, right? But the reality is, when you are living a more spiritual life, right, and when you are wanting to create a truly more soul aligned spiritual business, it's so important for us to spend less time in our head, right, and more time in our heart and our soul, and to allow ourselves to see the signs, slow down the pace and breathe, and just allow and remember, no matter what's going on, it's all okay, right? I've had a lot of personal things going on behind the scenes, and like most people, when we have other things going on that are not with our control, there's things we do to sometimes have control, but we do things to maybe try and help, and we do things. And in this situation, it's so important to do what you can to cushion yourself. And I've been doing lots of things to cushion myself. And I realise there's some other things I need to cushion myself more from, because I was starting to feel a wee bit unwell. I was getting a bit of adrenal fatigue. I wasn't sleeping. I also had really noisy neighbours for a week, which was impacting my sleep. And had vibrations coming through the house, which vibrations for me can really impact, can just really kind of shake up my nervous system. And it was a situation where I knew had been coming. I had been getting a slight premonition and a feeling. So there were certain changes that I'd made in my business. And I'm so grateful that I have a lot of my business on automation. Some of it has to be changed at the moment, but I do have things on automation, so that I still can get sales while I'm doing other things, okay? Obviously there's certain things you want to do, but there is still some sales comes through while I go and do whatever I need to do, so I'm really lucky. But that's also decisions that I was guided to, and circumstances and synchronicity in my life all helped me make all these wiser decisions, right? In life, things happen, and sometimes we foresee at that point that it's negative, and sometimes we don't want it to happen. And it might not be for ourselves, it may be because we're concerned for another family member, or we can see something coming, we're worried about them. It's maybe nothing to do with us, but there's still a personal aspect because it's impacting us. And it's just like your business. Your business can be your baby, right? You can go over attached to your baby. I go over attached to my baby. I don't have children, I don't have a partner, I don't have maybe the same balance, just to do with some of the medical challenges that I have. And yes, sometimes I attach too much to that baby. And if you have children and you understand when you're attached to your children and you're worried when they grow up, and you're worried that maybe when they go off and they do their own thing and you can't control it anymore, there can be a little bit of anxiety. And that's what happens when your business grows up, or when your business grows out of its comfort zone, or maybe your business decides to, and I will leave you, right? And it's so important that we, as part of being a spiritual being, we have to learn detachment. And obviously we all are human, and there's things that are going to trigger us. There are things that are harder to detach from than others, right? But when we can detach just even that little bit, it can give us objectivity, but it also helps us see the signs more clearly. I've had many situations in my life where I've tried to force things, right? And I've tried to make things happen. And many of it came from my own trauma, right? And my trauma was mostly, and this is going to sound a bit strange, but I honestly can say that most of the trauma that I felt in my life was from the medical profession, and also some healers and therapists who did some crazy things and said some crazy things to me, and many times from lack of awareness and lack of understanding and where they were at that point. And also I have shared stories, some horror stories of what went on and certain things that people done to me. But one of the things that can keep us in that kind of thing is that we all, and that's one of the things that is very important in stress management, is that we understand that often when people are stressed, anxious or traumatised, they feel as if they have no control over their life. They feel they have no control over other external situations and even internal situations. And even though we try and empower that person to take their power back, there's also an element of helping a person be as empowered and cushioned as possible. And also recognise that we never have full control over sometimes certain events. Now, if you look at what's happened the last 2 or 3 years, that is proof where no matter how powerful someone was into manifesting in certain circumstances, there wasn't a person that probably wasn't touched in some way. I have to be honest, I was touched very little because of my circumstances, but I was still touched in certain things, but I wasn't as impacted by many people. But the reality is that life throws us curveballs, right? And it's often the curveballs that take us to another point in our life, and they shift us, and they can shift us hugely spiritually. And often the curveballs that maybe you find yourself in, that you think, oh my God, I've got myself in this situation again, or whatever. Another person never knows your story, right? And another person doesn't know your journey. And that's maybe not your story, but what I mean is your journey. Often we don't know where we're going to end up, right? And that's where letting go is so important, and letting God and being guided. And it's about trusting that you can you have the courage to allow Spirit to guide you, right? And not to hold on so tight that you think that you need to control every moment and that you're in charge, right? There's a huge, big, wonderful universe out there. There is so many realms of things that we're only scratching the surface. And many of the things that we learn in the spiritual world, right, we maybe go the next year and realise that how we've understood that is completely something different, right? And there's another level to that. We just look at the word awakening, and the word awakening is used very loosely in the holistic and spiritual sector. And often I think there's misunderstanding and lack of awareness of what they really mean. People understand by that. But the reality, awakening comes at so many levels that every time you're on that next step of another step of towards awakening, because I think when they use the word I'm awakened, I think it's just you're on a little step to awakening. And I think as we go through all the different layers, we see things from a wider and bigger perspective, and realise that even when the first step that we didn't know anything. And spirituality is like that. And when I talk about God, I'm talking about anything that's the highest vibration of, to me, I think there is still God, no matter how, other people's got different ideas. I believe in Jesus. I believe there is angels. I believe in ETs. I believe there is so much more out there than we can imagine. I've also experienced, and I've been fortunate to have some wonderful experiences and signs in my life that were indescribable and showed me at certain peak points, at my lowest points in life, I had experiences that dramatically shifted me, and they were the signs and the synchronicities, right? And what they taught me, and I have to be reminded of them, because it's just, I suppose we all have patterns of behaviour. I have to be reminded, like many people, that it's the periods where you step back and allow, when you don't know what to do, when you feel stuck, right? And of course you can be guided to go and get the help, you can get support, and sometimes we just get stuck because of our mind. But there's so many times in life that it's so important that we let go of that need to be in full control. It doesn't mean that you completely stop what you're doing. Sometimes you have to, that's not what I mean. But sometimes you're just not noticing or not wanting to see the signs and the synchronicities that are trying to tell you. And there can be different layers to that. So I'm going to share one experience I had years ago, and a couple of things that's maybe happened recently. But many, many years ago, I worked for a counselling organisation. In this counselling organisation, they started off with the right intent, right? But for many people, if you work in the charity sector, it's very hard to get funding, right? And people can go into these charities with great intent and try to offer a service that's really needed. Sometimes to keep the funding, people do crazy things. And basically, this organisation had actually asked me before they formally got funding if I would come in and do work with them. They'd seen that I had certain qualifications and the wide skill set that I had. They felt I would be a huge asset, but also I would help bring them funding because some of the skills I had, right? Because what they could do was kind of hire me out, and they could also use me just as a way to get funding. And I was quite happy to help. I was doing something, I always done some sort of charity. Even when I was really ill, I always done things to help people, and I was always trying to, and even when I was ill, I did, I wrote articles, I did things to, I felt as if I was contributing to society. And what happened slowly, that organisation, you could basically say, went down the tubes. They started losing their integrity. In many ways, it was they were trying to play Robin Hood, right? And they were doing things, I'm not going into what they were doing, but I found it, so I had ended up doing some of their accounts for them. I ended up doing, it was me and two older women, basically, and well, there was three actual older women, and there were some other people that came in. But when I'm talking about key skills and key members of staff, I was one of the key members of staff, and I had a wider skill set than most of them. I was very switched on techie. I could do accounts because I'd done my own business. I had lots of other skills other than my therapy skills. I was trained in coaching. I'd done a bit of psychotherapy. I had my stress management qualifications. I had a wide range of things. But I was spreading myself too thinly. The team became too reliant on me because they were not skilled in skills that they should have been skilled in, right? So it was a bit top heavy, and I was only supposed to be employed part-time, and it was getting out of hand. And slowly I found myself in a situation where I was doing everything with integrity, but the organisation I was working for was doing things that was hurting my soul, and was in my level, it was making me feel sick. And I kept challenging it, and I have never been a person that has enjoyed or found easy to challenge anything. But I will stand up for something that I really think is wrong. But anyway, I was starting to get iller and iller. But I also had a situation where I had started taking on some very vulnerable clients who had been seriously let down by other people and had felt damaged by other people. So there was me building up a rapport with these clients who didn't really want to go anywhere again and had just started to build a bit of trust. And there was me thinking, I need to leave this organisation because my integrity is going out the window. And then I discovered there was something not quite right about the accounts, but it wasn't me, it was someone then had went in and done something else with accounts. All sorts of things started to happen that were telling me not to go to work. That my moral, or the things in my head, were saying, no, I have to go because of the clients. Oh, you can't just not go to work, or you can't just pack it in. You would let people down, all these things. And the amount of things that happened. And I'll give you an example. One morning, I fell, twisted my ankle. My car wouldn't start. And then I went and managed to get the car fixed. And I went out with a twisted ankle, went to work, and I got on the dual carriageway, and The next thing, my car went over a cone. And it was quite funny because this cone was under it, burst something under my car. And then there was all these bus drivers. And these bus drivers at the side of the road were all hanging me down to stop. There was a whole load of them, and it was a small car I had. They actually lifted the car. All these guys lifted the car with me in it. And took the thing out for me. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen. And there I go, still goes to my work. Now this thing was leaking. I think it burst a pipe or something. I can't remember what it had done it, but I think it started leaking anyway. I got to my work and then I fell, right? And it was one of those days the sweat was coming off me. My stress levels were through the roof. And I went in, and honest to God, it just was like one disaster after another. And the next thing, that day, I went into my car during lunch. I think it was at a break in the afternoon, because I think I didn't even get into lunchtime whenever it happened. And I asked, please give me some guidance, please give me some advice. And I was going to just walk out that day, right? I was going to, because then I was nearly broke. I was at breaking point because something else had happened. I found out that they were doing. But I knew that wasn't the wisest thing to do. And then I asked for guidance. How should I deal with this situation? How should I deal with it? And I remember a client had come in that day while everything was going on and left me a gift. And I was quite shocked when I saw the gift, right? Because I came into the office and I remember I didn't want to speak to anybody because of everything that was going on, and I was in bits, to be honest, right? I was very emotional and I was not coping, right? And what happened was this girl had left me an angel, and I don't know if you remember, I've still got the angel somewhere. It's called a needed angel. Now, this girl it wasn't in a new box or anything. I think it was she that had it, or she had bought it second hand or something. And it was a needed angel. And inside the bag of the gift, for the gift she gave me, was strange. This was really strange. I had a picture, and you know sometimes you get these modern pictures and they have 3 pictures. I don't think they may be fashionable as much fashionable now, but they were fashionable then, where you get 3 prints inside the picture. And I had this one, and it was roses in my bedroom. And when I had been fixing something, I became a bit clumsy. I dropped it and the thing got ripped inside. And a guy I was seeing at the time said to me, I'm going to look for the middle of I'm going to look for a print to see that we could match that for you, because it was ripped. And it was a nice picture. And there was inside this bag this beautiful rose that was actually the missing. It was exactly the same one. I didn't know till at home, but it was the exact same one. It was in the middle. So she had put, it's like a postcard type thing you could put inside, right? But it was exact match. It was unbelievable. It was the exact match because it was 3 pink roses. And there was a message behind it. And there was a message saying, Eileen, I just get this sense that I had to gift you this and not to give it to you today. And she says, look up the meaning of this angel. She named the angel, and she says, I'm sure it's something to do with a little bit of patience or whatever. Look it up. And I remember going home and looking it up. And it had said something like 1 ounce of patience. And it was all to do with just waiting it out, right? Now, on my way home, before I'd got home, I'd actually bumped into a guy I used to work with from another charity. And this guy gave me some information. He looked at me and he says, my God, you look terrible. He says, what's going on? He knew me very well. He was a really nice guy. And he says to me, well, I explained to him what was going on. And he went, I've got some more information that might help you. Because he says, explained to me, he says, look, Eileen. And he explained to me that the organisation was getting investigated, which I was horrified about. So he said to me, go home, don't worry about it, just go home, right? But he says, I don't know if you should go back in the next couple of days, take some time off. There was loads of serious events happened, and I kept getting angel feathers. I kept seeing angel things. There was all sorts of things happened. And also, this angel had a rainbow on it. And that night when I went home, all I saw all the way home was rainbows. It wasn't the one rainbow. It was a road that took you off in different directions, and I actually seen, like, I think it was 3 rainbows. And rainbows were always a sign for me. I know some people find rainbows for me were always a sign for me for things. And I remember I was crying my eyes out going home, but it was almost I was being told everything was going to be okay. Now, that organisation was investigated. It was very, very serious, right? And I was horrified about it because I was terrified about my reputation. Obviously, I had started doing accounts. There was a whole legal, it was very serious what had went on. The amount of things that happened after that then to protect me was unbelievable. The amount of things that happened, the people that just through a fluke I met, I spoke to, people phoned me about a few things and different things happened, and it was really, really strange. But also when I looked back, I realised that Spirit had been guiding me for months to leave, right? But then I had got to a point that then it wasn't a good time to leave. I had to wait. So there were different things happened, and it meant that then I could leave with complete. It was a lot better for me. There was loads of things that happened. But also what happened at that point, I had spent so much time doing for this charity and not getting paid. So obviously I was only getting paid, I was getting paid a very small amount considering how many hours I was doing for them. I wouldn't have even matched the minimum wage, the amount of hours I was doing. And there was my business. I had let my business go so low because I was doing for all this charity that there was no work coming in. And I didn't know how I was going to pay my bills. And then again, all these different things. And I remember one of the things that I did, and I remember I said, God, you have to guide me what to do. I need to do what's right here. I want to do what's right. Please guide me. Give me signs. Now, one of the things I did learn in this organisation, so don't get me wrong, these women were nice women. They just lost their way. And they were hanging on to this charity. And they were trying to do anything to keep it going. And they started doing things they shouldn't have been doing. But the reality was, I was also gripping on to this thing about worrying, about upsetting people and about all the other things. When I stepped back and asked for that guidance, my God, it came, right? Now, between this time, there was something to do with tax or something. I can't remember, it was something. And someone had asked me to pay money back, and it was a lot of money. And another thing had happened during this period, which was crazy. I get accused of not having insurance in my car, and I was going to get fined £1,000. It was a complete, it was a mistake by the insurance company. It was a long story, right? But basically I had all this pressure and all these bills and thinking, oh my God, how the hell am I going to pay all this? And it was so bizarre. I remember going to a friend, it was a shop locally that had, and she became a friend who had an angel shop. And I remember my mum was really sick at the time. There was something going on with my sister. Oh yeah, my sister was going through separation. And I remember picking up an angel for my sister, and there was a feather flew, and obviously feathers kept appearing everywhere. And then she says to me, I'm going to get you a new one. And I says, no, I want the one in the window. And then she says to me, that's strange, Eileen, because she said, we've seen something else. I can't remember what it was. There was something else under it. And then she explained a story, and it meant something to me, and I can't even remember what it was. I went home, and I remember thinking, this £1,000, one of the £1,000 to pay, and I thought, how the hell am I going to pay? There's no money in my bank account. And I remember I went through to my room, and I saw a feather float down on top of my table, or not my table, it's like a unit. And I don't know why, but at that point I got a message to check my bank account. And I went into my bank account and there was £1,200. I had got money back. I think it was from the inland revenue or something, right? I was shocked because it covered the money. There was loads of things happened after that. And the key thing was that I had the ability to surrender. I had the ability to let go and trust. And obviously also be spiritually guided, not let my ego do what I thought I wanted to do and what how I wanted it to work out. But I surrendered, I let go, and I said, right, come on, help me, right? Now, over the last few years, obviously I have my own stress management business, and I don't do a lot with that. That's more my accredited relaxation training, stress management training. The marketing is always something I've helped with people because it's something I understood very easily, something I studied a lot. But most people who work with me know that what they get is a wee bit more than marketing. They're getting more about their purpose. I'm helping them up level as a healer or a coach, because I've been a trained healer for 30 years and I've done lots and lots of training in all sorts of things, and I've experienced all different types of modalities, worked with all sorts of teachers around the world. And I knew 3 years ago, before the pandemic, that I was getting guidance, that there were certain things I would be supporting healers more move forward. I didn't really think it would be about their awakening, because I think sometimes we can, again, I think it's easy with the ego for us all to get attached to certain ways of how things come through. I did know from a soul level that I would be supporting people move forward. Now, quite a few things has happened over the last 46 weeks where other people said things to me, synchronicities, that have reminded me that maybe I had been focusing too much in the business and marketing, where I'm not owning my spiritual teacher and my healing abilities, and not owning that part where I'm helping people move forward at a deeper level, right? Now we're all at this point, at the point of awakening, where we're moving and we're shifting. The planet's shifting, people are shifting, people are starting to wake up that have not really woke up. People who thought they were woke up are awakened, who weren't really awakened are starting to awaken. And many of yous are going to be in the front line dealing with the chaos and the fear and the drama of other people's suffering and shock, and also the wonders that come with it, also the part that people then start to feel the empowerment and realise they can be more empowered, that they have more choices than they think they have, that there is a bigger and better world out there, we just need to create it. And many of you are going to be really at the ground level. And quite a few people through the years always said to me, Eileen, you should be doing more work, for example, when maybe people have got Lyme's or Mercury, or with people with ME or rare conditions. And I used to say to them, I know that you might think that's the obvious career choice for me, but that's not where my strengths lie. And I think this is so important for us all to remember, that sometimes people have, just by looking at parts of you, think that a certain thing is where you should be. Sometimes you don't know where you're going to end up being. I never ever thought I would end up where I am right now, right? And even to do with awakening, I used to say to my friend David, sometimes when I was in a bad mood, like being like a wee child and I had enough about something, I would say, I don't want to be awakened, I don't care about awakening. Now, and I remember he used to laugh because he says to me, you'll end up probably one of the most awakened because you just don't, it doesn't really interest you, I'm always about being of service. We all are different in so many ways, right? And we all have a different part to play in this jigsaw. And it's so important not to let anyone dictate or control where your path is, right? no matter how well we mean. Of course, people can give you advice, and sometimes, yeah, we do need sometimes to see things from a different angle, because sometimes we're so caught in something, right? And I get caught up in just everybody else. But the reality is, every single one of you has a different journey, and you will have different signs and synchronicities that will keep you going in your path. And many of you may be very, very surprised where you end up being. And sometimes that doesn't mean, and I've said this before, doesn't mean that your job is a healer, as in you can have done all this training, but you may end up being in another career where you can use your light work and you can make an impact, and you will make a bigger impact than a light worker who's a healer giving physical healing or helping someone, right? Because what you're doing is you're shifting the energy, you're shifting the vibration, you're bringing the light to that area and to other people that would maybe not experience certain things. And that has been happening for a long time. And a lot of things, I think sometimes people forget a lot. They look at the word light worker and they just think it's like a healer, a therapist, a coach, a teacher. There's some people that are even in this, that even class themselves as coaches and therapists who are still on a very low level of consciousness, so they don't even understand a lot of these concepts. And there's other people out there who are lawyers, judges, police, doctors, even the government officials. You even might not want to hear it, but there will be people out there that are light workers, that are doing something behind the scene that we have no way of understanding, and they are part of the jigsaw. They're a fundamental part of the jigsaw, right? And all you can do every day to make sure that you are on your right path is ask to be spiritually guided. Ask to let go and let God. And see, when you talk about spiritual guided, make sure that the guides that you, if you use guides that are connecting to you, are coming in from a really, really high vibration. Always challenge that, and always ask that you bring in clearer. I don't actually ask for guides. I ask to be completely connected to the highest source, always. And then if anything else steps in, that's fine. I always do that for lots of reasons. I'm someone who's trained in a lot of entity work and attachment work. I've also seen and experienced too many things working with healers, and healers who think their energy is clear, right, and whatever. So I've seen that, and that's why I don't do that. But one of the things that I would say to you is, at the moment, notice the signs, notice the synchronicities, and surrender when you need to surrender, right? And allow things, if things change, they change. It's fine. Some people get so caught up in, oh, but my God, my business is going to have to change again. Oh, it looks so unprofessional, whatever. We are evolving at the moment. We are really, really evolving, right? And remember, you're always asked to do, yeah, there'll be some things that might be challenging as in it stretches you because of your own fear. But you will never be asked to do something that that it's maybe not your zone of genius, or something that you have the skills and gifts to do, right? It's often an ego wants us to do things that we're not that good at, or it's because, guess what, we want to be like someone else, or we want to be seen like someone else, or we may think our own skills and gifts are not shiny enough, are not amazing enough, when the reality is so far from the truth. Every single person is part of the jigsaw, and every person has equal importance, right? My role is not to be with people, to go out and do job logs. My role is to help the healers and the teachers and give them strength and support and move them forward, right? What is yours? And even if you just know what your role is today, what one thing that you can do today, right? And even if that's self-care, that's the most important thing you can do at this point in the journey, because the journey at the moment, we're at pivotal points in society and in the world. Right now we're at pivotal points, And no matter if you like it or not, we're in a spiritual war, right? And we, in many ways, have one already, right? But the reality is we still have a part to play. It's like the movie, we know the ending, but we still have to play our part to create that ending, right? And every single person is needed. And don't ever think that anything that you do positive each day does not help the universe. It does. It's the butterfly effect. It's the small things that have a huge effect. You could say something positive to someone. You could help a neighbour. You could smile. You don't know that the impact that that can have, right? And often people, the ego gets us to think it's all these big things that we need to do. Often it's the small things that can have a cascading effect, right? The key is knowing when you're just sitting back and you've been stagnant and you are sabotaging yourself and not committed, right? Not fully committed to your spiritual path, not fully committed to your spiritual journey, or not fully committed to your spiritual business. You may know what you're here to do and be guided to do, but maybe there's self-sabotage going on. Again, this is something, you need help with. Reach out. I do inner child stuff, and I do spiritual and soul purpose work. A lot of times I do the magical, use the magical child, and that can be really useful. For a lot of healers, it helps them tap into the creativity. It helps go into the sabotage and patterns in a more creative way, and it helps you shift so that you turn a lot of things that you may think is a problem into more a creative solution, right? And you see things from a different angle. So it might be another archetype that you need to pull in. But just remember at this point, no matter what's going on in your personal life, no matter what is going on in your business life, right, we are going through huge shifts. And sometimes you'll not get the answers. And sometimes you're not supposed to get the answers. Sometimes you're not supposed to see all and know all, right? Because that, it doesn't always do us favours, because it doesn't keep us open. And the more open we can be to the signs, the synchronicities, and flow with life rather than control it, you are in flow with spirit. You've got that connection going and you're trusting. So build that trust, and remember that if you truly want to create a soul-aligned business, a spiritual business, it's so important to trust and spend less time in the head. Okay, so I hope that helps. And I'm wishing you an amazing week. Okay, take care everyone. Bye for now.